It's lights out today on December 13th for the RLR Podcast. We have yet another great lineup of topics for you guys today. I'm Matt, that's Nick, and let's get to it.
Well,
First up, let's hit recharge, Nick. What do you want to chat about first? Go over the week.
um, well, I think the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car should be something we should at least touch on, being that we're big Porsche fanatics.
Yeah, they released a couple days ago the new 911 base GT3 Cup car. Perfect livery, I think. It's basically surrounded in just like a dark gray on light gray livery with racetracks from from around the world. It looks awesome, of course.
I couldn't agree more.
Cool to see. I think a little bit of blue in there. I think personally, you know, black and red was my favorite color combo growing up. But I think now, as I've gotten a little older, blue and gray just seems to speak to me, much like the Porsche collaboration with the Embraer. So I don't know.
Yes.
We'll see how it performs, obviously. But it's cool they released it. It's a cool thing to see. New 911 base car.
Yeah, and the Cup car is kind of just it's known to be one of their top end
Mm-hmm.
privatable, or I wouldn't say privatable, but able to be bought and used on private race team spec vehicles. So it's very interesting. I'm excited to see some of the customer teams come out and start using that new frame. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see.
Speaking of Porsche, did you see that the Taycan Turbo S got the fastest EV lap around Road Atlanta this week?
I did not, but I'm frankly not surprised.
I'm not surprised either, especially since Atlanta is the hometown of Porsche North America. Would
And the
see
Taycan Turbo is basically a freaking rocket ship on wheels.
well, it's the Turbo S, so we're talking top echelon of that class. Just interesting to know that Road America, or I'm sorry, not Road America. I'm looking at my Road America sign in my in my recording space.
Road Atlanta.
Road Atlanta has a separate class specifically for EVs.
And again, not surprised at all. I think it might be quite some time until we get the EV record beat, for asking me. But we'll hopefully maybe Porsche will think of something even crazier with the next gen Taycan and see, and they'll beat it with that, whatever that is.
Yeah, well,
It's an absolutely insane piece of engineering.
yeah,
I love it.
well. And then speaking of rocket ships, you got to fill me in on
Well,
what
yeah, I
happened
mean,
with this.
speaking interesting segue in there, we I don't know, because it has an engine, obviously, SpaceX and Mr. Elon Musk here in the states, they launched their SN8, which is I believe the first prototype of Elon Musk's and SpaceX's Starship, which is the, shall we say, vehicle. I think would be the best way to describe it. That Musk plans to take humans to Mars within the next 4 years. I think by 2024. It had a successful launch. A little interesting fire when it got up to its orbiting um, altitude, and it looked like things were going to go really well until the crash landing. So, um, what I will say is it's really cool to see. It's obviously not easy to do. I mean, to create a reusable space vehicle to get humans to Mars. And though there was a big crash, it seemed like the space industry over with. Like Jeff Bezos even commenting. Nonetheless, it was still a triumph. I think the SN9 is already ready to go in the future for another test flight. So, though it was a crash landing, looked like it might have been successful up until it just kind of collapsed on itself on the launch pad into a ball of fire. Still really cool to see, and let's get humans to Mars, man.
Well, and the fact that from space, the technology is there to be able to land something on a specific point is just interesting to me.
Oh yeah,
But
for sure.
that's yeah.
I mean, say it obviously wouldn't have wanted it to end. Thank goodness, obviously unmanned. But and I can imagine how much the SN8 costs to create and fly and whatever. But it was so cool to see, I think, and you know, what SpaceX already is capable of landing, its rocket boosters and current vehicles on, you know, platforms on land or out at sea. Anyway, they figured that out, right? That wasn't perfect the first time out, so I'm sure they'll figure this out too. And just that much closer to someday humans hopefully getting to Mars. So it's cool.
Something that we saw around here. Well, I guess not here in the States, but here on Earth, if we're coming back down from the global perspective. Silverstone,
Beyond global.
or Silverstone, depending on which region you're from and how you pronounce it,
Mm-hmm.
has decided to rename the, was it the Pit Straight?
I believe it was the International Pit Straight.
So the International Pit Straight will now be the Hamilton Straight, which I was joking around with Matt before we recorded the podcast. We ought to start a segment called Hamilton Watch, because it seems to be that we can't stop talking about Lewis Hamilton and the things that are going on outside of F1 racing in general related to him.
That's not to say he's an incredible athlete. He's an incredible driver. One of the greatest of all time, and by records, I mean 7 championships. Technically the greatest. If that's your measure of the best, quote unquote. And I mean, I'm again surprised, but also I feel like I'm not surprised. On the other side of the coin. I mean, I still think it's well deserved. It's just Hamilton, 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 everything. And again, good, of course, good to see him, get racing this weekend again and back recovering or recovered, quote unquote, from COVID. So interesting. I hope to once COVID's all over to get out there to Silverstone and see the Hamilton Straight. So it's
Absolutely.
interesting. And let's head off at Hamilton. Too much on his not yet sirness, I think, right? As he will be knighted. But interesting, another F1 related, at least manufacturer from this standpoint, is Ferrari's CEO Camarelli resigned after less than 2.5 years in the role, which I think that broke maybe even like end of last week or very early this week. And from what I was reading, it looks like, quote unquote, he stepped down with immediate effect from both as CEO and as a member of the board of directors for personal reasons. So, kind of interesting that he is, stepping down after from both positions, and I think so soon after less than 2.5 years in his role. But who am I to question personal reasons? I mean, well, I don't think it's in our interest to know exactly why, and I think you join me in saying wish him all the luck and whatever he has going.
Absolutely.
Well, it looks like I think that, what is it? On this looks like December 10th via the New York Stock Exchange, the interim CEO, while Ferrari looks for a successor, is John Elkan. Elkan? I don't know how to pronounce that, but I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. So, and how Ferrari changes over, with a new individual at the helm. So we'll see, right?
Definitely, we will see, and we'll be keeping a close eye on that too.
Think that's it for recharge. Let's dip on in. Let's chat about some of the stuff, some of the things more in detail here, and let's get the paddock chat. And do you want to start with, what do you want to start with? We got a couple things here to talk about. Obviously, the last race of the season with F1, but more
I
than
think
just that. What do you want to start with?
the first thing we should make mention of before we dive into paddock chat here is that Matt and I have decided, because this is the end of the F1 season, this F1 season has been absolutely insane between COVID and driver switches and things changing for next year.
Mm-hmm.
We've decided that we're going to be doing a special podcast released on Wednesday the 16th, specifically talking about F1 season, the way it went, the highlights of the season, the wrap up.
Interesting things, stuff for next year, all kinds of different, I would say it might even be a little less structured, just, a plain kind of, paddock chat, if you will, but yeah, it'll be get to hear our opinions on what happened and what will happen, I guess, right?
Absolutely, and that's yeah, like I said, that's a one off. We're not going to start doing 2 podcasts a week, but for this specific event, and maybe we'll do specific events like this in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But this will definitely
I'd say
be
so. We're
something
gonna try it
that
out.
yeah,
We're
we're
new to this, along with those who listen to us. So we appreciate the support, and yeah, we're gonna come along with us. We'll figure it out as we go.
absolutely. But getting into F1, I
You
think we
want to
should
have the
definitely
race
talk
first?
about the Abu Dhabi race that happened today.
Well, let's as I must say, I'm ecstatic that Verstappen here. I mean, I think hit a proverbial grand slam in F1 with, I think, fastest lap, led every, lap of the race, qualified in on pole and won the race. Got
Fastest
first.
lap I thought was contested right in that last lap by Daniel Ricciardo.
I thought he got uh,
Did they? The
uh
stewards were gonna look at the time because they may have invalidated him for crossing the line. And I did not see an update on it yet.
well, then let me see if I can search the interwebs here and see if we have a
Well, while you're doing that, I'll do a brief recap of today's race. um, lights went out. Sergio Perez had an unfortunate incident, and Max Verstappen won. And that's about the highlights of today's race.
well,
So,
besides Mercedes having, I guess some issues, but
well,
or some like just not kind of they just weren't weren't themselves, today.
yeah, and Lewis even said he was struggling a little bit, just kind of recovering from COVID, which is completely understandable. The guy had COVID last week and is now, obviously recovering. So that was that was interesting. I think as well they knew that they were having powertrain issues.
Mm-hmm.
Toto mentioned it beforehand. Lewis Hamilton mentioned it beforehand. Valtteri mentioned it, and I believe even Bono mentioned it on the radio. It's just they were having an issue with power this week, so they were tuning back the engine, taking some of the power out so that they could last this final race without taking a
Being
penalty.
is that a lot of manufacturers, including them, were on their third power unit of the season, and obviously, even being on their third power units, everyone I think was having a lot issues generally. So like even
Well,
Racing Point was down on power and was losing like zero point 0.2 seconds to Renault or whoever they were trailing the entire race. So
and I believe they said it
mm,
was a $6 million fee that they would have to pay to add a fourth engine or
yeah,
fourth power unit. So, you
for
know,
those who are unfamiliar, generally you don't just get to have as many parts as you want. You get three power units, for the whole year, and obviously teams would try not to have to take penalties and get sent to the back of the grid, especially for the last race of the season. So they were on their third. Most of them, if not everybody, was on their third power unit already. Those engines being, towards the end of their lifespan, regardless. So it's the last race of the season. What are you gonna do?
right.
And I also I believe I confirmed here based on what I'm seeing online. I wouldn't say with 100% validity, but it looks like Daniel Ricciardo got fastest lap
Okay.
over Verstappen. Don't
Yeah,
quote me,
and
but that's what I'm looking on Google here. That's
I
what it looks like.
believe it was on the last lap that he achieved that. So,
Well, so congratulations. Happy to see Max. I'm beyond happy to see him really close out the year on an incredibly strong note, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Has already won the constructors championship. Hamilton has already won, his seventh championship. I mean, great to see Bottas back on the podium after what 3-4 Grand Prix. I mean, you know, it was
Yeah,
great to see
it's
a little
been
bit different of an ending, but still a very boring race, if you ask me.
yeah, it was one of those, and I did feel bad for Sergio Perez. Just he has
Yeah,
had such
oh,
an
man,
amazing showing, and for him
it
to
was a
be
little
out
heartbreaking.
on I can't remember exactly which lap he was out on, but that
Towards the beginning, like
it was the
first
first.
third of
It
the
was the
race, I
first
think.
third. I just don't know exactly which
Yeah,
lap it was, but
I remember what happened. Was it just his engine? I think he
it was a
lost like
transmission
oil
issue.
pressure and he just stopped. You
Yeah,
know?
it was oil and transmission. To what I understand, he had an oil pressure issue, and then the transmission locked, and he couldn't get it back out, which is why we had the virtual safety car at first. Then they couldn't get it off, so they had to pull a
Yeah,
real
they
safety
couldn't clear the
car.
car for some reason. I mean, what a terrible ending for him off the high of, you know, podium from the first podium last week to or last weekend to, you know, potentially still not being signed for
Yeah, he does
2021,
not have a drive for this season.
though
Heaven
he is
forbid.
confident, worst case he'll be back in 2022, and I believe that. Of course, there's talks about him maybe going to Red Bull or Alex and blah blah blah. Something we might in depth in the Wednesday special. But and what a still I think a heartbreak because if this is
Yeah,
his last time in F1, God forbid even at all, what a heartbreak, you know.
yeah.
Just like Grosjean, I hope that if it's Haas, I don't know if you saw Nick, but apparently Haas doesn't have any leftover power, leftover cars, quote unquote, for Grosjean to take a spin in. They have like separate power units, but nothing that he could take a spin in. So there is the Mercedes offer for Grosjean to take a ride in one of their machines, or Haas and Gunter was saying hopefully Ferrari can make that come true as well. It would be crushing just like for Roman to not end his F1 career on some kind of a so hopefully that happens as well. Hopefully we see Perez back in F1 next year or as soon as possible if it's 2022, worst case. So yeah, it was about the only bad thing I think of the race. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it was a decent race. It was just boring to watch. The problem I don't like a lot of people, I don't like
There were
Abu
some
Dhabi.
good midfield battles in the beginning that but they weren't like heart racing ones where
Yeah, but I mean
we
the
had.
closest battles were seconds apart still, right? I mean, for the most part until the very end there between what was it, Lance and Ocon. I mean, I think that was the last
Yeah,
best battle
and
towards the end.
the first, I don't know, the first half of the race, I think there were some decent midfield battles. I think there were some fantastic passes that were made.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Gasly made a terrific pass. I think it was on Seb, wasn't it? I
Was
think it
that
was Seb.
it? Very well could have been, and
I
quite
think it was
honestly,
Seb.
that
Middle of the
that
race
the fact that I can't remember it is part of
is
showing how.
indicative of
Yeah.
the race. I mean, I gotta be honest too. I fully intended to sit wide eyed and watch the race last every single waking second of it, and I found myself kind of getting up to go quote unquote it was early in the morning here in the U.S. So make breakfast and do a little bit of Christmas decorations here and there, playing with the dog. I wasn't 100% paying attention all the time. I mean, we did get to see a flawless stacked pit from Mercedes.
Which I'm sure George
Where
Russell watched the
oh
replay of
god,
and went, "What?"
sorry George. I mean, but
Yeah.
there was that safety car in the beginning because of Perez. It made sense for everyone to pit, and they put on what their hard tires. They let they good strategy obviously for the track or for the circuit, and stayed on them.
And
A
for the
little bit
first
of
time,
lows
we
there.
heard Max say, you guys can turn up the car because we're we're not really pushing right now."
Yeah, I mean he had some worry. It sounds like towards the late latter 2/3, he had some worries about some vibration, and maybe it was some the hard tires not being warm enough. But I mean he kept this how they started is how they ended basically, right? I mean at least the top four with Albon coming in fourth, and I like a lot of
Yep.
people. I just don't really care for the circuit. I don't really like it. There's what two DRS zones, two basically locations on the track to
There's basically
pass, two
two
hard
locations
braking,
where you could pass, and that's
and
the
that's it. I mean,
turn one and turn mm, nine, I think.
I
But
don't know the actual turns. Sorry, it escapes me. But it was just not the kind of ending that for the season that we had, there was a lot of highs and a lot of low interest, even with the short 17 race season. I think, not obviously not the great ending in terms of Max winning, but in
Well, and
terms of
we're gonna get 23 races next season for them
yeah,
to
if
entertain
well,
us.
if cross your fingers, hopefully, who knows how the pandemic situation could throw some monkey wrenches or some loops in there, but hopefully, I'm confident that we will. It's just wasn't a very interesting race. It was just kind of eh in terms of action, in terms of on the edge of your seat, right? So
Yeah,
I I know there's calls to remove it from the calendar all over Formula One. Dang,
I agree with you. What we were talking about beforehand. I don't think it needs to be
you know,
removed from the calendar. However,
just don't make it the last race of the season. I get, and you pointed this out to me that sponsor being right next door, they stay there for weeks after to test next season car and prototypes. I don't care. Figure it out. Fly there, especially in non-COVID time. That's easy for them to arrange to travel. If they can arrange all this travel during COVID, then even without COVID, just don't make it the last race of the season. It's not, especially if you have a really interesting season. Like it's just kind of a boring end. I just keep it on the calendar, throw it somewhere in the middle or in the beginning, and just don't make it the last race of the season. It's not interesting enough, frankly.
well, and next year, it'll be very interesting to see if it is back on, uh, the calendar, or at least towards the end of the calendar, just based on the fact that the track is part of the Global Expo for 2020. It was supposed to be Global Expo 2020, but it's Global Expo 2021 and into 2022 now.
Yeah, isn't it
So
like October into March, I think,
I believe
or
so.
something like that? Yeah, we'll have to see. But then again, I mean, the season shouldn't end. It usually doesn't end this late either, so they could still be done by then, or but we'll see. I mean, it's something to be interesting. I hope. I'm sure they won't, given that 2021 will be kind of like a placeholder season until the new cars come in 2022. And again, we can talk more about that on Wednesday. But it's I just it's kind of not my favorite circuit out of the season or just in general. So I think about, would you agree with me, Nick, that I think the most interesting part of the weekend was Kimmy the fireman on, was it like P3 or P2 or FP whatever? I can't remember what
Yes.
practice session it was, but his Kimmy's Alpha caught on fire. Saw some pink fire, made me think it was the NGU again. Burnt, pink fire being, when lithium burns, it's pink. Our chemistry lesson, as we heard from the guys upstairs. But Kimmy showing his, his experience, took the fire extinguisher from, I think, like the marshal, and started pointing that extinguisher in the exact places that he would know to point them to limit damage to the car, to get the car to cool down. I mean, Kimmy the fireman, just experience. It was just cool to see him take the fire
Yeah.
extinguisher and just start putting the stuff on his car in the right places, just not just dousing it with the
Well, and
extinguisher.
Kimmy, without a doubt, is the most experienced driver on the grid
Oh,
right now.
for
So
sure.
it does not shock me, with all the other roles that he has had, that we could not add fireman to that list.
I think that was, obviously, we're happy to see him out of the car. I don't think at any point was he really in, I'm not gonna say in danger, but in anywhere near the dire straits that obviously Grosjean was in, from his accident, his crash, frankly. But I mean, car lights on fire, you still don't want to see that, and that's a little unnerving. So he got out of there quickly. He actually had, if you watch the replay out from the car, I noticed something, and they were talking about this on the replays, something with his radio that I think I want to bring up on Wednesday as a something I can't believe the hasn't been looked at yet. In terms of safety. I think you know what I'm getting at, Nick.
I'm not entirely sure what you're getting at, and to be honest with you,
Eh,
I didn't have a good chance to watch anything until
Today.
Q2. So
Oh, gotcha. Well, if I can set it up, it's something that if there was a much dire situation and he had to get out of the car a lot quicker, but still needed to communicate with his team, obviously, on the pit wall. It's a safety feature I find lacking, and I'm surprised that the governing body of FIA hasn't looked at yet, and how it's still seems like there should be something better than what there currently is.
For
Not a big hit,
specifically for the radio system, or
pretty much. Yeah,
so yeah, I
I think we can go maybe more in depth on safety stuff, because we got Grosjean stuff we can talk about and all that. But I never really thought about it until I saw it, on my television screen. I'm like, that doesn't seem like I should have to do that. So we'll see. I'll chalk it up to maybe a quick Wednesday chat.
sure.
I mean, with that, is there anything else to talk about
Well,
about the race? I mean, maybe some of the after interviews. I mean, usually those aren't the most, but I mean,
no, and
to find something interesting. I mean, Christian with his after interview,
yeah,
Alex and
and
all that.
I would say yeah. And we'll talk more about the situation with drivers on Wednesday. And I'm sorry to keep referring to that, but I do promise that will be there. But he did. Some people said masterfully. I say kind of flubbed a little bit the softball question about Albon's driving today and what that means for his future with the team. Obviously, I'm sure Christian can't confirm or deny on camera at the moment what's going on with Albon and drivers and things like that. But I definitely think he was definitely pleased with Albon's performance today. However, when I want to say it was Crofty, it just asked him the simple question, where does Alex sit with the team right now?
Yep.
And Christian just kind of stared at him, and then he's like, "Does he have a seat?" And Christian's just, "I'll get back to you on that." And they're like, "Well, when will you have an answer?" And he said, "You'll know as soon as we do." Okay, bye. He noped out of that conversation as fast as I could see.
It's still weird that up until the literal very end, we still don't have an answer. I'm not gonna say I frankly don't have I think we talked about it last week a little bit, but I don't know if I wouldn't be surprised if they kept with Alex, because I think he's shown, at least towards the latter part of the season, he's still got something there. But
he's also been a great defender this entire season. He can defend his place very well.
He can overtake very well. I also still wouldn't be surprised if he got replaced. So I don't know. We'll just have to see what goes on. And frankly, another one is Hamilton still isn't, like, quote unquote, Mercedes' second driver, quote unquote, still isn't confirmed. So I think I did see Hamilton maybe in an after interview on an article today say that he's hopeful to begin talks and have something short up by Christmas. So I would assume we'll see him obviously with Merck again next year, at least for next year. So barring of course, with all the talks about him maybe leaving and the salary caps and all that going on a while. So I'm sure he'll sign, get into contract, and we'll have another interesting season maybe next for 2021, which we'll talk more about Wednesday. So besides that, I said not a whole lot happened in the race. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe a little uneventful crashes and only one person out. Also wasn't very thrilling. So with either way, F1 the weird season that has been. So now on to a little bit of relaxing for the drivers and prep for next year on for the teams.
Going home to spend the holidays with their families.
Yeah, and have I love how they say Happy Christmas. Sounds cool. Little Merry Christmas here in the States, but I always like the phrase Happy Christmas. Interesting. I heard that a lot.
Heard that a lot today.
Saw the George Russell carve out with the Santa hat on.
Oh,
in the William.
I actually chuckled quite a few times when they would cut to that. That was great. Now,
All right. Well, with that, why don't we? I think what we should hit. I want to talk about, chat about here is mm, maybe a little bit of. I want to save the last thing here, number 4 on our list, to the end. A little bit, if you're okay with that. But I want to maybe
yeah, that's
hit
fine.
NASCAR real quick. There's some news
Yeah.
about NASCAR. I think it's kind of cool. Well, I mean, it's really cool. Frankly, I don't know if anybody who's listening heard, but NASCAR, all 3 series, that would be Sprint. Was it the? Geez,
It's
the
the truck
Cup
series.
Series, the NASCAR Truck Series, and the Sprint Xfinity Cup Series, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Sprint Cup, Xfinity Cup, and Truck. Basically, I think is, again, not as familiar with NASCAR as I would, but in 2021 they will be racing on in the states at Circuit of the Americas. So obviously one of the calendar events for F1, very different from even your typical, the couple road courses that we see each year from our quote unquote professional left turn drivers, which they are all very talented drivers in their own right. But I think it's going to be really cool to see NASCAR basically, drive on what should be a very challenging track, especially for what
I'm
they are used to.
extremely interested in the pure sense. If you look up, for those of you listening, if you look up a map of the Circuit of the Americas, the actual race course down in Texas, it's unlike any. I mean,
It's interesting,
essentially, every racetrack is just a giant oval that's been misshapen in some way, shape, or form. Whether
more or
it's
less.
a speedway, which is a
Some more
perfect
than others.
oval, or you get Circuit of the Americas, which technically isn't oval because it does have a start finish line where it's a circuit. However,
Hmm.
the amount of hairpin turns, tight turns, it just, to me, it's going to be hard for me to wrap my brain around
Yeah,
NASCAR taking those turns right now.
it doesn't seem like something those cars are built for. I mean, I think,
Yeah,
simply put.
point blank, those cars, at least in my mind and from what I've seen, are really not built for that. And take for example, so Circuit of the Americas versus a road track that they're currently on, like Road America. And Matt and I are very familiar with Road America. We've both been on Road America,
Yes.
and I've actually raced on Road America before. And I, Road America it's a great road course for NASCAR,
Hmm.
but there's not a lot of super tight hairpin turns. You know, turn turn 2 ish, but not on the full course, but not really a ton. Canada corner, yes.
A little bit.
I mean, it's just, but that's the end of a long sweeping straight, and
Hmm. Hard break,
you know,
semi hard braking zone. I mean,
but even
nothing like
so,
Circuit of the
Road
Americas.
America is a wide road course.
Hmm.
Circuit of the Americas is not a wide track, and on top of that, the hairpins. I mean,
Well, Eva, I think one thing I read in the article, COTA, COTA, just easier. At COTA, it's not like there isn't, I guess, area to a lot of swath that they could, play with. I think one thing you and I were looking at before was they're gonna change and modify the track a little bit with bump strips and extra tire walls, speed, speed camera, speed zones, and caution lights. Essentially modifying the track like you would for any, visiting series, a little bit to kind of reel the drivers in, give them less space that, so they don't just take full advantage of wide areas if there are any, make it safer. So I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, more than interesting. It's going to be really cool to see, and I will definitely tune in there to
yeah,
see what that looks like. I don't even know of anything. I think it's the first time ever for NASCAR like this. So I'm ecstatic. I think it's going to be awesome.
well, and I pulled up a map real quick of COTA, Circuit of the Americas, and just taking a general look at it, I could see them getting. I mean, turn 1, that's a pretty tight turn,
Pull
but
them up here too.
what I'm looking at is like turn 11. 12, 13, 14, 15, and then 16, 17, and 18 are pretty normal, but then 19, and then that turned into 20 with...
And the elevation, too. I mean...
Well, you've got the elevation at play with that, but on top of all of those factors, the most interesting thing to me is really going to be seeing how these cars and all of the engineering that goes into NASCAR, and a lot of people look at NASCAR and they're like, well, they're just, for the most part, the stuff that you see, majority, the super
They race
speedways,
on ovals.
Yeah, on an oval track or a super speedway.
Designed for quote-unquote quote-unquote straight line speed. There are some road courses here and there, but still nothing like this. I mean,
yeah, this is going to be really interesting. And I think it's going to bring a lot of fans to NASCAR because at least people to watch the one race at Circuit of America. Or Circuit of the Americas. I mean, it's really... I'll be tuning in. I don't tune into NASCAR every week, but this is something.
Yeah, I did.
The question that I have is,
are they going to? I don't watch. I'm sorry.
Well, the question that I have is, are they going to turn Circuit of the Americas into more of a sweeping turn course?
I don't know. I haven't anything that goes beyond just more so of an announcement. So I don't know.
Well,
we'll definitely have to see how this shapes up.
But within that announcement, didn't they say that they were going to make some NASCAR officials were going to make some...
like, it didn't sound like gigantic changes. Things like some safety stuff or, some quote unquote like what I amount to like rumble type strips to maybe make some of the wider areas a little bit more narrow so they can't just, go around each other or whatever. A little bit, I wouldn't qualify that as, like sweeping changes though. I mean, I still expect to see, for the most part, them racing on the quote unquote normal circuit. So,
I guess sweeping was probably the wrong term to use. I'm talking more about the actual, like, are they going to widen the turns or anything to give them more breadth in those turns?
I don't know. I didn't get that feel from what I was reading, but like I said, I'm sure we'll see more come out, as time progresses here. I think it was, I don't know when they plan. I think it was either like March or May. I can't remember which one, but a month with an M, maybe I think is what I remember reading about. So if you guys see it online, feel free to reach out to us, let us know. But we'll definitely keep our eye on something. You said
something that I actually just found here. Dale Earnhardt Jr. said that,
cool.
And he's obviously a current NASCAR broadcaster on NBC, said that they are definitely going to be using the turtles, as they've been coined, the rumble strips, but he said that they're laying them out in a way where the drivers will force the stock car and the truck drivers to truly drive the circuit without taking advantage of COTA's more forgiving extended asphalt runoff. So they're not extending these turns out any bit. So that's going to be extremely interesting.
Put it this way, I don't watch NASCAR truck racing, and I'm going to watch it on Circuit of America. I think it'd be really cool to see. I really do. It's going to be real interesting, and I can't wait for it. Yeah. Does that say what you found when they're going to do it? Was it March or May, maybe, of 2021?
It did not say in this specific article, but
well, we'll keep you guys informed on it nonetheless.
Yeah, I think there's other changes coming to the NASCAR season next year as well. That maybe when it gets closer to that, we'll look at diving a little bit deeper into. But yeah, especially, I mean, we did talk about the quote unquote car of the future, although we won't see that for a couple of years yet. So
yeah. Well, do you want to move through, chat about something else here? I think interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe a difference of opinions, but some random thing I was thinking of and I saw an article about, and I, of course, play with here from time to time is online car, manufacturers' websites. They have their online car creators and configurers or, design studios, whatever. You can, it's a lot of fun sometimes on like BMW or even like Ferrari or whatever to, makes obviously Porsche to make what you would buy, right? And some people actually use these configurers. I don't know what the proper term is, but car
Configurator.
creators,
Yeah.
configurators, to spec a car that they actually want to go to a dealership and buy. Or if you're like a Tesla, you can actually buy, online, I guess. And interestingly enough, and I've seen this too, where you don't always get to see the full price of the car, which leads to a little bit of deceptive marketing on these car creators and I think just automakers' websites. It seems like, until you get to like the summary or the end all be all, that's when you see the full price of what you created with the destination, all the taxes and fees and extras that you don't see throughout the entire process, that you get to play with it, whether you're doing it to buy a car or just for fun, right? It seems like, you spec a car one way and you think you might be specking a $55,000 car, but with all your extra fees you could pay another 5 grand in fees for destination charges and whatever. So I don't know, I find it a little, on one side I find it a little bit deceptive in terms of you know marketing and just not in interest of full disclosure from these companies. On the other side, though, you brought up a good point, Nick, where even though that happens, I still wouldn't go pay full price, regardless for a car anyway. So,
Yeah, and I don't know
you
if
know,
we've ever mentioned it on the podcast before, but I do currently work in sales. Not in I'm not a car salesman, but I do currently work in sales. I have a background, my degree is in marketing. I think from the standpoint of me looking at it from the business aspect, I mean, you do eventually get that information at the end.
oh yeah,
But
yeah. I'm not saying that I guess since you one of yours, I too have a degree in marketing. I mean, I'm not saying it's, if I did so, I mean, I wouldn't say it's wrong. I just find it a little bit, you know,
well,
deceptive, especially in today's climate. It seems like the more transparent automakers are actually doing better, especially given current times. However,
now see that leads
negotiations
me
is a
into
skill.
that leads me into the second point, which is
Yeah.
for those of you who don't know, you don't have to pay the sticker price on the car at the
Yeah.
dealership, and you don't have to pay the price that you bring it to them. Um, I don't know of very many dealerships, big name dealerships or franchise dealerships. I'm not talking about the Carvanas of the world or, um,
Yeah, your
you
typical,
know,
car manufacturer franchise
yeah. So
dealership.
I'm talking if you wanted to buy a
Typical.
Porsche Cayenne today, and you built it online and you brought it to the dealership, I would highly doubt that they are going to charge you the manufacturer suggested, keyword is suggested, retail price for that car. Um, most of the time they are working deals. The salesmen obviously work on commission, so it's going to be their goal to
Mhm.
get you as high to that MSRP as possible. But
That's why negotiation is so crucial. I mean, obviously you want to get
right,
the lowest price, but or you see things like what the eighth generation mid-engine Corvette were going for, what, like 10,
yeah.
or even like
If
the
you're
Kia
paying
Telluride
MSRP,
too.
you're either getting ripped off or you're buying a Supra. So
Well, it
um,
depends on what you're buying. I'd add the Kia Telluride because I actually went to go look at those for fun the other day, and they still can't keep those things on the lots, and a lot of dealerships are just charging well over like 5 grand over and even MSRP for those things, and people still pay it. And
which I always
it's
find
strange.
so interesting since our experience with the Kia Telluride is so awful. When they
I think there was a reason for that,
there
but
was an
we can
absolute
talk
reason
about
that
that
we found out
later.
later, but for those of you, side tangent real quick. Um, Matt and I went to the Chicago Auto Show. It's a
That
tradition
the
for us.
2019 show we went to
No,
for him?
that was this year. We went before
Was it
COVID was a
really?
thing. Um,
Was it really?
yeah,
Okay.
because so my birthday is in February. The auto show always
Oh,
falls
that's
around
right.
my
Yeah, it was.
birthday.
Yeah, it was right before when I went out of the country in March. Yeah, that's right.
Right. So and we rode in the Telluride, and I remembered the
That was
Telluride as just a
awful.
well, it was an awful experience, but I remembered seeing it somewhere, and I couldn't think of where. And then I remembered that it was when it was jumping over things at SEMA. And then I remembered, I wonder if this is the same car that blew out its shocks at SEMA, jumping over
Well, I
things.
remember, I'll never forget this, is riding in the, and to, I mean, to be fair, one of the things that was a lot of the Jeep is known for having the Jeep, the experience at the auto show.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a really
Camp Jeep.
robust, yeah, Camp Jeep, really robust. Something that has evolved into Camp Jeep and is awesome. I think we make a beeline for that every year. Kia had a very short course and very kind of lame course setup, frankly, for the Telluride. So that also didn't help, their case. But I remember, Nick, you were sitting in the front in the passenger seat, and I remember sitting in the back seat in the middle because I wanted to see what the middle of the car felt like. I remember the driver not saying a word where usually they talk about it and like kind of upsell it and so on, which we're used to.
Right.
You looked at me and I looked at you, and I'll never forget this. We said to each other without a word spoken that like when we knew how awful we each
The look of
thought the car
disdain
was.
on your face, and it
It
must have been
was
disgust on mine, was just
yes, it
like
was
bad.
immediate, like just in agreement, and we didn't even have to talk. Like didn't even. Of course, we weren't going to badmouth the car coming out of the line, doing the review. We did leave suggestion, constructive, criticism for them. But frankly, I don't remember saying a word about the experience until after we were well away from the location of the
You know
experience.
what? Now that
And
I'm thinking
frankly,
about it, Matt,
we
this
didn't need
probably
to.
was the 2019 show
I'm thinking it was 2019.
because I went to SEMA in 2018,
I
and
really think it was. I
and
don't
I was
think
watching
we
them
went.
jump. I was just looking at the footage of them jumping um,
Yeah,
over
and
stuff in
whatever year
2018.
it was, though, I mean, they were just off. Like we, I think the thing is we were well versed on the hype about them, and we expected something. Frankly, I think we both expected something far more than what we got. As you're saying, turns out later that those were the
Those
very
were the cars that
same
were
vehicles.
those were were the marketing vehicles that were jumping for days on end in Las
Yeah,
Vegas and SEMA that were then taken to the Chicago Auto Show and let
yeah.
people ride in.
Which I think was, I don't, I think that it makes sense to get the full use out of those vehicles as possible. But in terms of clearly they fixed something, or it didn't work to people who might not pay as much attention to new automobiles as we do, maybe, or other various petrol heads. I don't know. It just seemed like a huge oversight to bring those vehicles to as the new Telluride
to something that
experience. You
you're
know
going
what I
to be
mean?
crawling over
Yeah,
uneven logs on.
yeah.
You, I mean, it just
It's
everything
interesting.
felt loose in the car. It was bad. So that
That
being
said,
said,
though, I mean, they have like dealers. I guess now, I think your brother on his podcast, or his not podcast, his YouTube channel has reviewed a Telluride. I checked them out. I have personally ridden in them and driven one and seen multiple trim levels. I mean, dealers were telling me that they can't keep these things on the lots and they're selling them for like 5-10 grand over MSRP. I mean, they
yeah, and
they
quite
did something
honestly,
right. I mean,
occasionally you'll get a vehicle like that.
yep.
Dealers will sell high end sports cars over MSRP because at that point there is more demand than there is for the
Well,
car
like the
itself.
mid-engine Corvette,
The
the
mid-engine
first
Corvette,
generation of the C8.
when they re-released the Supra, the
Yeah,
BMW
yeah.
Supra, I mean the Toyota Supra, um, you
But
know,
all of that said, usually, no matter the pricing techniques on the websites, which I get it, it's a little, it's there for a reason and it's done the way it, for a reason. The finance and marketer business side of me says, great job. Good on you, mate, right? The consumer side of me says, who knows the other side is, really? Come on. Like this is a
yeah, it's
little bit car salesman-y, frankly. But at the same time, you should be negotiating anyway. And I think you do have a point there where, you know, I disagree about the Porsche though, because though we love Porsche, isn't the typical misnomer of Porsche where the exorbitant price you pay is pretty much for four wheels, one seat, and an engine? and everything else is optional. I mean,
I mean, that essentially that's the perception. Well, it was the same way with the Dodge Demon. The Dodge Demon, literally, it was, do you want a passenger seat? That's $1. Do you want a back seat? That's $1. Do you want the Demon crate? Oh, by the way, that's what allows you to go drag racing in the car that we built for drag racing. Oh yeah, it's
how cool
$1.
of that was that of them to just figure out loopholes around to basically make it the easiest possible method for people to have a drag car in their driveway.
Yeah, well, and speaking of configurators,
Okay.
why don't we stay on this topic? We'll close out the podcast on this topic. Who do you think has the best car configurator that you've seen?
Hmm. That's a good
Because to
question.
me,
So
it
let me ask you before you tell me yours.
yeah, yeah,
So are we saying like the way I look at it, there are your typical standard manufacturers that have, you know, very detailed everything because, like a Chevy, for example, very detailed. It actually, quote unquote, works well because people want to see everything, right? And it just but from a technical side, it's just crappy, right? I remember playing with like Ferraris a long time ago, and everything was so much more beautiful and the experience was, you know, amazing.
yeah,
But
and
the thing
for the
didn't even work without
listeners,
16 refreshes of my browser.
yeah,
I mean,
so that
so
for
is that like full package or are we looking at like one part or one specific, part of the configurators? You know what I mean?
oh, I was just more or less looking for your opinion, and for the listener, this is me just completely throwing this in. This is not in the script. I just kind of wanted to get Matt's opinion on it while we were talking to each
I
other.
feel like before you tell me yours, because clearly you have I think it sounds like you have an opinion on it. I It's been a while since I've played with a configurator online, and I will say that back when I was a kid, I played with like the Mustangs and the Corvettes on Ford and Chevys, and well, I've seen those get a lot better, right? Haven't really played much with a lot of say like international car brands in the form of like Japanese or Korean cars and things. Exotics not so much, but from what I have, I'm sorry to beat a dead horse, but I think the Porsche configurator in general is
Yeah,
the
people are
best
gonna call
experience I've had.
fanboys on this one, but I'm
I
definitely also
I'm
saying the
sure, but
Porsche
I'm sorry.
configurator.
I mean, that's not to say that there are some good ones out there. Like so I think
BMW has a
mm,
fantastic one. I think Tesla did a good job initially. I haven't seen theirs in a
yes, I would
while.
agree. Tesla had an excellent one when they offered the model like first generation Model S. I would say I haven't played with it frankly since, and said I recently played with Chryslers to look at something for my grandparents, and it was terrible. Like I wanted to compare multiple different things at once, and I just didn't like it at all. I found it more reminiscent of older day Chevy. The mod you know, I
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I'm talking about. I gotta be honest. I hate I hate to beat the dead horse, but for image quality, for ease of use, for the options,
Well,
for
just the fact that
the
almost
experience,
like 98% of the options are when you click it, it appears on the car in a 3D
immediately.
model.
And here's the thing, Porsche, even for as expensive, much like BMW, and I don't know Mercedes very well. I don't play with Mercedes a lot of Mercedes like their configurator a lot, but BMW does it well too. All of like their like very expensive cars, especially like the 911 with Porsche whatever is still there to play with. Where usually you might expect a $200,000, $300,000 car with full options or whatever wouldn't be able to you know build a dream version of it, but you still can. I mean, like I think that's awesome. I wouldn't expect Ferrari to have, and even to that point, some of Porsche's more expensive models, or even like Mercedes and some of their more expensive, or BMW, but Porsche still does, and along with BMW and Mercedes, and I just find that really awesome.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm looking at Mercedes right now. I pulled it up. Um, I mean, it seems okay. I'm just kind of going through it. I wouldn't say it's to Porsche's level. Um, and again, scream fanboy all you
Mhm.
want, but go check it out for yourself.
I mean, I will
Um,
gladly agree with that.
I wouldn't say that
I will still say
it's
that I'll be objective. Like if Porsche,
yeah.
you might not, you guys might not believe this, but I think I speak for Nick here that even if Porsche had a bad one, we'd still say it was a bad one, but
Yeah,
it's not.
case in point, I'm a big fan of Mazda. We have two actually technically three if you count my brother's RX-7. By the way,
Mhm.
my brother, I always throw my brother's channel out. The Shooting Cars channel on YouTube. His image is a red RX-7. The red RX-7 is no longer in the family. However, the blue RX-7 is sitting in the garage. But we've got a Mazda 3, Zach's Mazda 3. We've got my parents' Mazda CX-5, and we have an RX-7. And I would say that Mazda's configurator is absolute garbage. It's trash. I absolutely hate their configurator, if you can call it a configurator, and I think that they need to do some serious improvement on it. It's more or less a list, like a menu of options, and you click something and it says, okay, here's your price, take this to a dealership or we'll email it for you. There's really it doesn't really change the image at all. I was back in the day, I
Mhm.
was looking at the Miatas, the MX-5s, and it just, that was one that I was like, you know what, I'd rather just go to the dealership and deal with it instead of
I gotta be honest. Along those lines, like you said, I'm playing with what is this? A 2021 Mercedes Maybach GLS 600 SUV, and not having played with this before, the build section, I'd say it's pretty good. Like
it's
on the
it's pretty
it's
good.
very quick. I would put it up there, you know, side a like Porsche BMW level kind of configurator.
Well, Germans do seem to be very
Well,
technologically
yeah, there's a
advanced.
common theme there. Let's check. Another German. You play with how about you play with Mercedes? Let's see what Audi does.
Yeah, I can't. I was playing around. Okay, so I'm done playing with Mercedes. I wouldn't say
Pretty
it's
good.
as good as Porsche. I can't seem to get a
I'd say it's close.
3D version of the car to load where I can move around and look at the different ways that the light hits the car like I can with Porsche. One thing I want to check on because I mentioned it is Tesla. I want to see if Tesla's is still as good as they used to be. Because in the past, it was.
I'm gonna play with the RS6 Avant
Uh,
because
okay.
that is a fast. I just
Um, Zach just drove a supercharged S4 on his channel, and he said it was the most insane, one of the most insane cars he's ever driven. So,
well, they'll let me build this. I would. These things are Doug DeMiro with his review. I think he did a great review of the RS6, and it's awesome. It looks awesome. It really
hmm,
does. All right, let's see what I can do.
yeah, check with that. In the meantime, I am just looking generally at the Model S. Um,
Hey, I'm playing with Audi here. Like you said, the Germans know how to do stuff with cars and electronics and air technology because this is a pretty seamless experience here playing with building my own RS6 Avant.
wait,
Very quick.
hold on a second. You might have known this. This is the first time I've looked at Tesla in a little while.
Yeah.
Did you notice that they made the joke that we brought up a little while ago with Ludicrous mode now being called Plaid because the only thing faster than Ludicrous is Plaid
No,
from
I did not
Spaceballs,
know
the movie
that.
Spaceballs? Yeah. Supposedly the Model S Plaid includes a 1100 horsepower tri-motor all-wheel drive system.
Well,
So
same along the lines of the Taycan. That's a rocket ship for the street.
yeah,
Oh, jeez.
yeah, I'm looking. So this shows you um a lot of features. It's got a lot of interesting graphics, but
Mhm.
this isn't. It's not the way it used to be. I think.
I remember what it was like, quote unquote, back in the day, and it was pretty cool to play with.
Yeah, now everything that you do, they're just trying to advertise their solar panels to you. It's like,
Mm.
would you like this? We'll give you money off a solar panel unit.
So the
It's like,
question is, can you Tesla? Here's an. I think I have an idea for Tesla. They have their solar panel roof tiles, right? Essentially.
well, it was essentially what started as Solar City, and then Elon Musk was like, yeah, Tesla sells better in the market, so we're just gonna make this Tesla.
Yeah, and then but like you could buy solar panels. Is that still possible?
Solar, like, for the house, your microphone
Yeah,
cut
for a
out there.
house.
Yes.
So what I think they should do along this thread of chatting here is, pump the brakes a little bit. I think what they should do is I should be able on this website to, quote unquote, I should be able to take a picture of my house, put it on there, and then see what my house would look like with their panels essentially on my roof, so I can see if I want to do it. You know, I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that solar panels are always an aesthetic choice, but
But hey, I mean, with Tesla, everything it should
yeah,
be it.
but based on their car configurator, it might be a little ways off before we get to that point. Um, Another vehicle manufacturer that does not have a fantastic configurator, I would say, is the FCA North American brands. Dodge, Chrysler,
Oh,
Jeep.
you're
I'm
right. I was just playing with the Durango for the same reason helping my grandparents.
yeah,
It's
I'm just
still
I'm not
awful.
I'm not a huge fan of it. And I mean, obviously, for those who listen, and people know, I've had Dodges my whole life. My first car
Would
was
you
the
say
family
top
shared.
prize for the worst? I'd even say like website in general.
Their website's pretty bad. I wouldn't
That's
say that it's
gotta be mine.
necessarily the worst because I've
Then what's
seen
worse than that? I gotta Dodge I think takes my top worst.
it's Dodge. Dodge does great in their marketing videos. Their website
Yes.
is bad, and
I
I don't
can't
know.
think of one who'd be worse, frankly.
It's been a while since I've seen Hyundai Kia, but much like their small
Well, let's
cars,
go find
they
out.
seem pretty bland and boring. So I'm gonna look at Kia.
Let's look here. I'll look at Hyundai.
Yeah, which obviously same same
Yeah, let's
ownership,
see.
but
Thanks for coming along on this ride with us.
yeah, this is like I said, and let us know if you want us to do more impromptu things like this. So
Google's a
let's
wonderful
take a
thing.
look at this Telluride. Um,
This is general website experience, right?
yeah, I'm talking more along the lines of like how is this to use? Is it pleasing on the eyes, kind of thing? And
Let's
immediately
bring
I
this.
want to throw this thing out a window.
Let's bring the
um, this is literally just pictures. Yeah, it's literally just pictures. You click a couple things, and it won't even let me go further until I enter all of my information. So, no.
So myself here playing with Hyundai, I think that it's the website and the configurator as well is reminds me of, for some reason, what I used to play with like Ford's website, Ford Motor Company, and not necessarily like bad. It's just what I would expect from Ford, or like a big name brand, large, of your standard everyday when I like consumer vehicles. But I gotta say, Dodge still worse by far.
Yeah, I'm going back and I'm looking at it. So, just out of curiosity, I'm looking at Mazda again, and it's still as bad as I remember. I'm gonna go to Dodge real quick.
It looks like I will say that Dodge looks a little better than the website looks a little better than it used to. But I have played with the configurator and just the overall thing. Well, right here, like I clicked vehicles and all Dodge vehicles, and no matter how many times I refresh my computer here, I'm using a MacBook Pro. That has something to do with it. no matter how many times I refresh the vehicle screen, every single image besides the Ram truck is blurry. Every single one. No matter how many times I refresh this, reload the page, or click a different one, every image of a vehicle until I click into it, I want to go look at a Charger or a Challenger. All the images are blurry. And why? Like, why?
So here's the interesting thing for me. I am currently looking at the SRT Hellcat Durango, and this is definitely better than I remember it. It's not good, I will say that.
I'd say that
But
that's the statement of the evening here about their
I mean, and I
better
love
than I remember, but not good.
I love Dodge. I absolutely love my Durango.
Oh, ditto. I mean, just in Dodge in general too. And I am thoroughly impressed with SRT and the new Hellcat Durango. I mean, but come on, it's almost like I get that they're a car company and every automotive manufacturer, but it goes hand in hand. It's kind of like you see a lot of reviewers. If you're gonna make a car with a heads up display or screen, obviously a well, I think like a dashboard, you know what I'm talking about, like a dashboard that's a screen, quote unquote. There's a better
oh yeah,
term for it, but you know what I
like an
mean. But like
infotainment system.
infotainment systems and your screens, like that, a requirement is good online presence. A requirement is high refresh rates on your gauge clusters. I mean, come on, it's 2020. Enough of this, in your like all the backup cameras and 360. Like it should be high resolution. Yeah, it's just a big pet peeve of mine in the car
Can I
industry
just
when that
say that
doesn't happen.
I absolutely love the color code Vice White for the Durango SRT.
We should probably
Yeah, we should.
cap off
Yeah,
this week, otherwise we're
we're gonna end up talking for too long
forever.
on this. But definitely, if you like some of the more impromptu stuff like
Impromptu
this,
stuff.
do in fact let us know. Um,
It's
so
fun. Well, remember, see, remind people here.
hmm?
We are going to be was that December. Make sure I don't get the date wrong because
December
December
16th
16th.
will be the
We will be we're doing a special edition of the podcast here centered around F1, current, previous season, or what we're thinking about next season, and all the things that have happened kind of in between. So be sure to tune in for that,
yeah,
and we hope to see you guys there for this special first time around thing we're gonna be doing.
yeah. So with that, I'm gonna call the checkered flag on this week. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Make sure to check out our social medias at Redline Resorts on all of our platforms. Email is podcast@redlineresorts.com. That comes directly to Matt and I. So if you do have anything that you want us to discuss, you've got anything you want us to see, send it over that way. I'm Nick. That's Matt. And guys, we will see you hopefully Wednesday. If not, we will see you next time.